Welcome, everyone. This is the Dig Endurance Podcast, our first ever Dig Endurance Podcast. My name is Aaron Tucker.
And I'm Shaun Tucker, Aaron's brother.
Brothers for a long time.
Yeah.
And the idea behind the Dig Endurance Company, and more specifically the Dig Endurance Podcast, is to talk specifically about emotional resilience. And Shaun and I have a lot of shared experiences, a lot of different experiences, but specifically want to touch on emotional resilience and what it means to dig in, to dig deep, to dig down, and to find those parts in yourself that you didn't maybe know were there, or that you had to find through adversity and be able to overcome what you maybe thought you couldn't. Maybe hear stories from other people that help you or inspire you to be able to do that. I think you'll hear a lot of stories from a little bit from ourselves, but also from our guests that simply just hope to inspire, uplift, and again, when you're down or when you're hitting a hard spot or hitting a wall or a ceiling, whatever that proverbial block is, get some inspiration for ways to dig in and to overcome it. And I guess at the very least know that you're not alone going through it. I think there's a lot of stories out there of people that have been able to dig in and figure out a way either over it, through it, under it, whatever it is. I'm Aaron, as I said earlier. I am born and raised in Fresno. And I did move away for a few years. I've lived in Utah, Louisiana, Colorado, made some rounds, New Jersey. Eventually settled back in Fresno with my 4 kids, my wife, Kelsey. I am the owner of Forward Family Services. Shaun and I work in Forward together. And I've owned other businesses in the past. I'm a big fitness enthusiast, specifically love endurance training. I know Shaun will share a little bit about that as well. Through my experiences with 4 children, with multiple businesses, and with marathons, half marathons, triathlons, whatever other fitness endeavors we've done, there's been many. The principle or the idea of dig applies to all of that for me, and that's what this is born out of for me. So there's a little bit about myself, and I don't want to overshare here too much at the beginning because I think that whoever does listen here will get a lot more of that later. So that's Aaron. Shaun, you want to share a little more about you? And
yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm very happy to be here today. Aaron and I have been meeting and planning the Dig Endurance Company out for quite a while. I think the best part about Aaron and I's relationship is, we have a lot of similarities and share a lot of common interests, but we're definitely different people.
Oh yeah.
And so as we were meeting about the Dig Endurance podcast and how it could affect the community, we had some good laughs because we have similar things that we like, and then we are just polar opposite in terms of certain personality traits. And we figured it would make a great conversation. And just to reiterate what Aaron said, endurance does not just apply to performance. Endurance is your everyday life. It's, digging deep to overcome obstacles and challenges. And everyone knows that we all have those. And so I'm excited to discuss things, to meet people, talk about them, and share some personal experience that, have had great effect on my life. I've got 5 kids, happily married to my wife, Megan. Very busy life. I've owned one company previously, and it was a great experience. I loved every minute of it, and I had an opportunity to come over here and work with my brother, and he presented this opportunity and idea that he had, and it was great. Adding in mental health and substance abuse services to an existing ABA company was just basically unheard of in this community. and it's been great, and so it's, our relationship has grown, and we've overcome challenges together, and it's been a great experience. And so I think being born and raised here in Fresno and being here for such a long time, other than being in school for 2 years in Utah, I've kind of dug down into the community of Fresno, learned a lot here, grown a lot here, and I'm really excited to share that with everyone.
For sure. So today, there's a little bit about the podcast, a little bit about us. I do want to explore more our story a little bit today and what's inspired, what's brought Dig about. So, Shaun, you personally have been through, a lot. And I know you can take that many ways, but maybe could you share a little bit more, like from your personal standpoint, some challenges that you've had that I know that makes Dig near and dear to you, and that really motivates you to start this podcast together. What would you say from your personal experience really drives that from your side?
That's a good question. There's a lot of story to tell in terms of my personal experience. I've experienced a lot, and those have been based off of bad decisions, challenging situations that I've put myself in, or not necessarily put myself in. I feel like as I've gotten older and I look back at all these things that, going back to why we've done the whole Dig endurance stuff is I have found a place that allows me to utilize all those experiences and just truly enjoy other people. My position here at this company is basically to meet people, bring them in, find out what they need, help them meet those needs, whether it's clinically or outside of the clinical umbrella.
So you're referencing Forward.
Yes,
yeah.
Forward.
Yeah.
I do intakes. I help direct over at the IOP program. Aaron and I are in the middle of doing substance abuse, residential treatment right now, getting that going. Using everything that I've been through and learning to combine it and just find my niche has been one of the greatest feelings of contentness.
I agree. We would bore the death out of whoever's listening here today talking about authorizations and getting clients into sessions in ABA. ABA, by the way, means Applied Behavior Analysis, and also we do psychotherapy at Forward. But the reality is, these people that we help, Shaun works with them every day specifically to get them into services with us, but they've been through a lot already. They are going through a lot still. And then on top of that, it's a monumental process of paperwork and, just pure mundaneness just to get in and be seen. And you have to help them be able to, in addition to whatever they're already dealing with, whether it's depression, anger management, familial issues, suicidal tendencies, the list is very long. You have to help them in a smooth way navigate, going through what's a very frustrating, stack of paperwork and an insurance authorization just to get in and to be seen with us, but while also maintaining their confidence. And certainly that is a principle of digging in. You have to help them be able to, hey, this is worth it. There's going to be more on the other side of this. It's going to help you get better. And it is worthwhile. It can be frustrating, especially building it out at first. But once you help clients through it and get them to the other side of that, I do think that is the best part too, is to see them on the other side once they're receiving the treatment and the help, whether it's behaviorally, mentally, socially, to see them come out and better on the other side through the services Forward provides. That is very rewarding.
That's what I was just going to say. Yeah. It's so rewarding. And so I'll track back a little bit. I had a great life, upbringing. We both did. Very close. We're all close. We have a huge family, 9 kids, total chaos. It's been, it's just been fun, to be honest.
Have we broken 30 grandkids yet? I think we have.
I don't even know what we're at.
I think so.
It's a lot. Within our communication between our family members, even just the siblings that live here, I probably laugh out loud, I don't know, 20 times a day. Mm. It's so refreshing. So once I, got out of high school and went to college, served a mission for my church, came home, I found myself making decisions that quickly put me in a dark place. And I was not familiar with being in a dark place. I mean, I didn't even really know what darkness was. I didn't understand the challenges that were presented to me. It was very eye-opening, but the problem is it was eye-opening in the given moment. I had no clue what I was doing. I had no clue what consequences were going to come down the road. It was very new to me, and so I made these decisions to get heavy into the substance abuse world, and it's dark. The whole thing's dark. Nothing about it provides light in your life. And, I found groups of friends that I felt close with, and quickly removed myself from the family, and quickly found myself out on the streets without a home. I found myself under freeways. I found myself near downtown, sleeping behind the bushes next to the railroad tracks down off of the 99. It was terrible, and I tried to get out of it. And that was just the first experience, right off the top of my head. And, everyone does the typical thing, right? You reach out to your parents. Hey, I'm done. I need some help. You find a residential substance abuse facility and you go there. And to this day, I've only had one really good experience, and it was the last one that I had gone to. You get these trickle-ins of, clinical situations and support, and nothing ever seemed to combine correctly. So every time I would find myself in a good place in life, I would find that I was unable to regulate whatever emotional instability that I had at that given moment, which would lead to bad decisions. And so in my life, like you mentioned before, I've just had a long line of bad decisions and needing to learn how to navigate those situations. It's been tough.
Yep.
Really.
Elaborate on, you said a deep dark place. I mean, what does that mean? I mean, what does that feel like? I just want to understand that a little bit more.
Yeah, that's a good one. Now that I am where I am, or where I'm happy with what I'm doing, it's easier to look back on those dark places because, specifically, I'll try to get specific for one situation. I mentioned some train tracks. If you go down by people that are familiar with Fresno community, there's the 99 freeway, one of the main freeways, and one of the main streets named Clinton and 99. There's a huge railroad. I don't even know what you would call it, just like a huge railroad station where there's tons of trains, and there's a huge set of bushes, and I had nowhere to go, and I was behind the bushes on the side of the freeway because I felt like that was the only true safe place to be because it was so loud and dark at the same time. The noise would drown out racing thoughts and depression and all of that stuff, and so it kind of helped take away the thought of every single family member, where they're at, what they're doing, and then the darkness, right? No one could see me. No one's going to stop on the freeway to help me. No one's going to see me behind the bushes. And, I mean, in all honesty, I would sit there and think, what's the date today? Oh, it's July 2nd. Aaron and Lindsay and Cassidy and Jordan and McKay, they're on the boat right now. I mean, I would be hard. So specific to the dark place I was in. All I could think about was all the things I didn't have because of all the bad decisions that I made.
Yeah.
And there was that mountain in front of me was so steep, and the light was so invisible. I mean, it was just blackness.
Sure.
It was just terrible.
Oh, and
I mean, that's just a small.
It hurts.
It was
a lot.
It did hurt. It
but
was
at the same time, and you've been in that spot not just one time. I mean, you felt that
Tons.
on multiple occasions.
Yep.
I mean, you've seen it harm you personally. You've seen it even professionally. You've seen it socially. I mean, with what you're talking about, with substance abuse and the various, and by the way, we know that obviously tons of families deal with that. I mean, there's a lot to be said about mental health, substance abuse, and all the various things we're discussing right now. There's hardly anyone who's not impacted by any of that. But so when you're at that point, you're going through that, you feel the pangs of it. I mean, essentially in all aspects of your life, socially, mentally, emotionally, physically, at work, at home. I mean, it puts you literally on on the pavement, face down. I mean, more or less. So having been to rock bottom, about as rock bottom as it probably could feel, what you mentioned, you found a place in particular that finally resonated with you. What things, what was it you were able to do to dig in to finally pull yourself out of that rut? What have you found you were able to do? And it probably, maybe it was quick, maybe it wasn't. Maybe some things are, you can do, hey, this can pick me up pretty quickly. Hey, other things take time, take practice. Like if you're speaking to Shaun today, who's in the hole right now, what would you tell him that you did to pull yourself out of that hole and to dig in and to get back on track?
I mean, there's a lot of variables in that question.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's a tough question. Yeah.
I mean, first and foremost, life is very unfair to each given situation. And when I say that, I don't just mean the typical life is unfair statement. It's not just that it's unfair, but everyone has different factors at play. Mm-hmm. Who's their support system? What family were you born into? How much money do you have in the bank account? Who's going to help you? Who's not going to help you? And so all of these things play a huge role in your progress. Mm-hmm. I mean, from rock bottom, right? Because lucky for me, I have a large family. So although, they didn't want anything to do with me, when I was willing to reach out for help, every single one of them was willing to hold out their hand. Every single one, including my parents. And so they held out their hand. And it's hard to be specific right at the beginning, because when you're in a place like that and you don't have experience, the challenge isn't really like, oh, I just did this. The challenge in answering that is, how did you do it? And to be honest, at the beginning, I wanted more. And deep down inside, I knew that there was a way. I just didn't know how. So I started with what I had. I had a family, and I had some good parents. That was good enough. There it is. So I'm going to reach out to the first resource available to me. And that resource may not be as readily available, but they're there. It's just, you have to take that first step.
Maybe rock bottom isn't total rock bottom. Maybe I starting by focusing on what I do have still in my life. Maybe I haven't actually lost everything. I think it's very easy and very human to feel, especially given certain challenges that we have, to all of a sudden feel like we've lost it all, or like we're at the very bottom. But I like what you just said, which is oftentimes I think the first and best thing to do is, what do I still have in my life to be grateful for? What is there that still, is there for me? And then build from there. So maybe starting with gratitude, recognition of the things that you still have in your life to be grateful for, that are still there for you, and the ways that you're blessed. I mean, the ways that you're fortunate. I can definitely relate to that. I think in my own situations that just starting there, that keeps the focus. Number one, it keeps it positive. But number two, I think it keeps perspective. It keeps proper perspective that, hey, there are still things in my life that lift me up, that I can look forward to, and then that you can build on as a foundation from there. It's not like you've ever truly lost it all, even though sometimes we want to think that. You know what I mean?
I mean, I agree. And another thing I'll throw in there is, when doing all of that, it doesn't mean it's comfortable. Reaching out to someone that put you on the streets, and yes, I know the decision put you on the streets, but reaching back out and humbling yourself for 5 seconds to put yourself in another challenging, uncomfortable situation like a drug rehab, it's daunting. You don't want to,
And it's hard from a family standpoint too, because I mean, they want to help you, but it's like trying to navigate that bridge between helping and enabling. And it's not easy when you're in a family member's shoes to say, man, I really care about this person. I want to help them out. But to some extent, you have to be able to let them help themselves out, because if you don't, that could actually hurt them longer in the long run. And that's a sucky place to be. It's not that, like you said, it's not easy. That's very difficult.
Yeah.
It's challenging.
I agree. And that's a great example of a dark place I was in. And there's a ton more, and we will dive into that. We're definitely going to. I think that as I've progressed along, nowhere near perfection, I've gathered some skills and some tools that have allowed me to navigate and help others navigate, which is even better now, to where the stories are kind of fun to tell, and maybe you can build a little bit of rapport, but it's about that knowledge of how to do it. And
that's probably the most rewarding and powerful thing, is that you looking back now, when you were in a hole, when you were in those deep, dark moments, it's a blessing to be able to look back and be able to laugh. You certainly weren't laughing then.
No, I was not.
But now when you get these phone calls from a family who their child is, pounding a wall and is, yelling at their parents, and there's discord at home, or there's substance abuse going on, or there's other problems, and then you're the one to pick up that call and to say to the parent, hey, I get it. I've been through it. It can be figured out. Here's what we can do. Contrast that. So now take the experience you had, the darkness, the emptiness, the face on the concrete, and how does that now work for you when you have those kinds of conversations? What does that feel like?
It's the little things, right, Aaron? I mean, we met about this 6 or 7 months ago, right? And you and I met, and we made the decision to open our lines up 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it has been genuinely rewarding. We have helped a ton of people after hours. I mean, right? Countless. And it's been wonderful. It's the little things for me, because we do get calls after hours, and they are desperate and they want help. And I enjoy it. I love it. I like talking to people. It's so rewarding.
What I think is powerful about your story that I really like is that, obviously not that you got out of that place, that you managed to be able to pull yourself out with the help of your family and your support system. I also think that the best part is that you took that experience, and now with all the calls you take every day, which I don't even know how many now, 15, 20 plus calls a day, whether it's for behavioral or mental health services, you're able to take your experience and off the get, people that are already in that place, a lot of times they're already in the dark place. You can, from your own experience, hopefully help them to get to where you got faster and with additional support than what you may have had. And that's what we do is all about. That's what digging into me is all about.
I agree.
Once you figured it out for yourself, then you take that to other people, and you're helping them to navigate their situation in a way that you've already learned, and hopefully you can help them accelerate, through learning their situation because of what you've been through.
I literally,
and
exactly.
I think that's what Forward, with Forward Family Services, I think that momentum has been built for us and is still building, and that's made a big difference.
Well, like you said, that it's still challenging to me. There's so many people come from so many different facets of life. I mean, you don't even know what the call is going to be about.
Right.
I have experience and I've learned a lot, but maybe that new challenge is going to come my way in terms of finding a way for someone else.
Sure.
And I enjoy the challenge. It feels good to, broaden the horizon a little bit and kind of have to get uncomfortable and learn a way to help them. And so being able to manage that stress and learn to navigate that path with someone else, again, it's so rewarding that, it just makes you appreciative and definitely have some gratitude for what you've been through.
Absolutely. So post, that experience, and obviously, I mean, when I say post, the reality of the addiction, the struggles you've had is that that's something you have to grapple every day. I mean, it's not like it just goes away, snap of a finger.
Nope.
You obviously have your life in a way now that you've disciplined yourself, you've patterned your life in a way that those things can be, that you can consistently manage that every day. which is even more impressive to me. And again, that's something that's powerful for other people to be able to learn. And that's something that you and I get to do as part of what we do with Forward, which is awesome. I know that obviously in this podcast, we're going to talk a lot about endurance, specifically racing. You really found that post, your experience with what you've been through with addiction and with, your substance abuse struggles. What did endurance, training and racing, I feel like I noticed a real turn in you once you dived into that. I know there's principles that translate to me as well in business, but how do you feel that made a difference for you too, and how did that contribute to the turn you've made?
Yeah. So as I continually struggled with addiction issues, and mainly once I had moved on from the substance abuse, there was a large gap in time, right, where I was married, I had a kid. The marriage was great. It just, we had differences, and we moved on, and I found myself in a hole. I didn't know what was going on or what I wanted, and I just genuinely was not content with myself. And so, I made the poor decision to begin drinking, and it was heavy drinking, no different than the early addiction days. And so, I found myself severely overweight. I was over 300 pounds.
I remember that.
It was
so literally normal Shaun, we would see at home and at the dinner table. I mean, I don't know. You're typically what, 170?
Yeah.
Give or take,
Yeah.
180?
Yeah.
And I think I actually I had moved away during this time. I was in Colorado or somewhere
I don't remember
when I moved.
yeah.
But I remember coming back and I was just like, whoa, like Shaun,
I can't. I see pictures and I still am just like,
yeah.
I don't even know how I got to the spot.
Yeah.
That was a challenge in its own, but somehow.
Well, obviously that was an outlet. Obviously it was an outlet for you. I mean, and an unhealthy
it was all the outlets. It was the only outlet. And so, anyways, what happened was, I found myself in this spot, and that it was just physically challenging in general. Right. So, actually ended up, in a new relationship with my current wife, Megan. And I've known Megan forever. I mean, we were like best friends at the age of 11. There's a picture of us up in the office and, as little kids. And so she knew me. Mm-hmm. And again, another blessing, and just the way it came together. And she never did anything but help and support me from day one. She knew all of you. She knew the family. She fit right in.
Yep.
Everything came with ease, except for me, of course. I had to provide every challenge in the world.
Let's make something emphatically clear from the beginning of this podcast. Shaun never comes with ease, ever.
I agree. And we'll get to Aaron in a little bit because he's just as hard. So anyways, Megan, she was loving. She loved me for who I was. She knew me for who I was, which was crystal clear to probably every family member who were wondering why and what this drop dead gorgeous woman is doing with this guy. So anyways, I'll kind of cut to the chase. It got to a point where we were happily married. We had our kids, and I was struggling to find a good, consistent job that brought happiness. And anyways, long story short, I had these really bad panic attacks, and they weren't because of anything externally. I couldn't stop drinking, and my heart, it literally felt like it was going to explode to the point of where I'd have to lay on the ground. I couldn't breathe. It was terrible. I'm sure there's tons of people out there that know exactly what I'm talking about. One day, on a Saturday morning in October, I'm laying down on the ground, heart's beating like crazy. I don't know what to do. It's just nothing's working. And this show comes on, NBC, and you can hear the guy's voice, and he's like, "Welcome to the Ironman World Championship." And I'm just kind of like, looking over at the TV, and anyways, the guy goes on and explains the distance, and I'm kind of like, okay, cool, guys are swimming in Hawaii and biking. And like 10 minutes into the show, they start showing people the stories. People from the Army that struggled with PTSD, people that were overweight that lost 300 pounds, and all this stuff. And I'm kind of like, okay, you got me. I'm going to watch a little bit. Then they start showing the athletes, and it's like they're running into the ocean, they're swimming 2.4 miles and biking 112, and then they run a marathon. And I'm like, all right, I was a star athlete in high school, and I played some college ball. Like, okay, let's do this. You know, I remember Megan walking out, and she starts laughing, and the first words out of her mouth were like, "Did you listen to the distance that the guy just said on TV?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's what I'm definitely in. Then let's definitely." She's like, "Okay, whatever." You know, I didn't have a ton of money, so I went to my dad, got a little loan, bought a ticket to a half Ironman. I was like, let's do this. Put some board shorts on. I was at the gym. I was over at GB3. I don't know, maybe an hour later. And I had an Apple Watch, you know, turned it on. And
I wasn't there for your first race. You wore board shorts for your first race?
No.
Okay.
No. This is right. Could you imagine?
Yeah, I could imagine.
No. I mean, but I would do that, right?
I would never do it, but.
So no, I had a GB3 membership. And that was just down the streets, like 5 minutes away. I put board shorts on. I had a pair of goggles.
Right.
No, that's not true. Mom brought me a pair of goggles from Dick's Sporting Goods, a pair of like smoked black Nike, you know, $10 goggles, and she dropped them off literally within like 30 minutes because Mom was out shopping. Right?
Yeah.
So she drops them off. I mean, 20 minutes later, I'm in the pool. This is like 2 hours after the show started. I was in the pool. I think I swam for like 10 minutes or I don't know, 400 yards, whatever it was. I got out and was like, that was cool. I don't even know what I'm doing, but that was pretty freaking cool. And then I went out and like rode the bike for 10 minutes. I was exhausted. So I come home and I'm like, okay, I did like a little thing, right? And so here's the best part. This is what truly sucked me in. All of these things are great with the panic attacks, the alcoholism, everything that's going on, being severely overweight. I never slept. Never. It just never happened. I was exhausted, and I remember getting in bed, and I fell asleep for like, I don't know, maybe an hour or two. And it was like, when I woke up, just having a little bit of sleep, I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. This is going to bring me happiness. And then what happened, right, is it just snowballs. I'm just like, oh, I'm going to swim 600 yards, and then I'm going to ride the bike for 12 minutes. And then you start reading things online and doing it. Anyways, it got to a point where
you start building momentum.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Momentum's powerful.
And so I had totally dug into this triathlon thing. I was in. The chemicals were changing in my brain. The chemicals were changing in my body. The weight was just, and I was not dieting. Let's be clear. I wasn't dieting. It flew off. I mean, I went from 300, 305, whatever I was. I mean, I was down to 260 in like a month. I mean, it just, and yeah, I know a lot of that's water weight. It's not just pure. I know all that, but it was coming off.
Yeah.
And it was fantastic. And then that even sucked me in even more. Right. I did a triathlon in Exeter. That was my first one. It was called the Rocky Hill Triathlon. Evan did it with me for fun, just
cool.
to kind of like, you know, motivate me. And it was like the worst experience. It was so physically demanding. The whole time I was thinking, this is terrible. This is terrible. This is terrible.
Was it a sprint?
The swim? No, it was an Olympic. Yeah.
Olympic, yeah.
Yeah. And so, and it wasn't flat. It's a huge hill. I don't know if you've seen it. It's a difficult travel. Anyways, I finished and
You thought you just conquered the world?
Oh my gosh, I was so mad at Evan for doing a sprint, and I should have done the sprint and all this. I just, you know. But let me tell you, that was the best sleep. I mean, I was probably solid 8 hours, and then it was really game on.
It's good.
From then on, I mean, right? There's a ton more to say, but long story short, I found something within that endurance world, and it doesn't have to be Ironman distance, but it is so important to have that physical anything. And everyone says that. Everyone everywhere says that, but it's like within the treatment that we do, substance abuse, mental health, that's why I'm always pushing for it. That's why. A lot of places I went to, I mean, they would tell you it's available, but they never push for it. And I've never, to this day, met a person that has applied walks, just a basic walk daily, that is not like almost addicted to it.
Sure.
Like, this is the greatest thing I've ever done, you know?
People think, I don't know. People think endurance training a lot of times, you know, it's just for the physicality of it, and that's it. I mean, it is rewarding. It will keep you fit. However, like, to me, it's so much more than that. Yes. I love it because it does force you to make a plan. It forced you to be disciplined. And it does force you, no matter how good the plan, just like in anything, in my opinion, you hit mile 20 in the marathon and the whole plan goes to crap because all of a sudden one knee is shot or whatever that may be. And you still have to dig in emotionally, mentally, and you've got to like deal with that pain or overcome it. And I don't know how many times I've had that happen in a race in some form or fashion. And it's really overcoming like that aspect and doing that multiple times that I find the most rewarding about the endurance training that really translates well, you know, into just life in general.
It's been great. And there's tons more to say on it, right? We can dive in.
By the way,
a ton.
Shaun went so far. I've always been more fit than my brother. I'm just going to throw that out there. It's just a fact. But, you know, he was overweight. You know, he starts diving into triathlons. We end up seeing each other. You come to Louisiana to do I was my first marathon.
Oh yeah,
and I'm like,
my first half marathon.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm just like, oh, this is cool. Shaun's gonna do his first half marathon. And here I've done like 10 plus, and I'm like, this is cute. Shaun's getting into running. I see him the next time, a couple years after that, he's faster than me. And then he's done a full Ironman before I even finished my first half Ironman. And before you know it, like I'm reaching out to you for my fitness advice and like my coaching, and like I mean. Testament to you, you know, and like your dedication and like diving right into it. And I realized, oh, maybe I'm not as tough as I thought I was, and maybe I can dig in and improve my training a little more and get a little better. So, and what's funny is to this day, Shaun still is my coach for running, and it's I'll have a story to share maybe on this episode that regarding my last race, where frankly I couldn't have even done it if it wasn't for Shaun's coaching.
Well,
so.
I mean, that's where I was going to head. I was just say, you know, tons to say about all of this. I like rehashing some of the stuff. I love sharing the basics of my story and where I came from. But Aaron, you've got an extensive business background. You've got tons of experience in the corporate world, mental health businesses, ABA business. What is your goal here? Where are you coming from, and what's your life story? Let's hear it.
You mentioned, I think very appropriately earlier, and I think all of our family agree, just as we're sitting on opposite sides of the table right now, that you and I are very different, and our experiences have been very different.
I agree.
However, I do think they've led us to similar places and similar conclusions, which is what's led us to Forward and to Dig. Whereas I think you had a little more of a rebel streak in you. You're more of a, you like to test the waters, so to speak. And that's maybe putting it mildly.
We say walk the line.
I am a lot less that way. You know, whatever that line is, I generally have stuck to it. And I mean, I'm a very highly motivated, focused person, sometimes to a fault. And so for me, I was eager and excited to start my career. I've always been driven in school and otherwise to succeed, to do the next thing, to do more. And you got to be careful about that, because if you're focusing too much on what's next, you're not enjoying what's in front of you. So I'm going to throw that little tidbit in there.
Good point.
I do think that's sometimes a regret of mine in the past. Although I don't regret being motivated. It is a good thing to be motivated and to always have something you're working toward. Just make sure you're doing that while being present. I've had to work on that. However, I've had a very fulfilling career and a very unusual one. Out of BYU, once I finished my bachelor's, I met Kelsey there. Best decision of my life was marrying Kelsey. We had our first kid in college. Tons of people would tell you to never do that nowadays. I loved that I made that decision. I would never take back having my first son in college. Yes, it was hard. Yes, there were new challenges for a very young couple. But I wouldn't trade for the world, going through college, starting our young life, and starting to have kids right away. I love that Kelsey and I made that decision together. We came back to Fresno, and I started, what am I going to do now? I studied all of business. I actually majored in recreation management, minored in business, minored in nonprofit management, and I'd gotten accepted to the MBA program at Fresno State, mainly because I knew I wanted to do business. I had tons of different ideas. I wanted to learn all of it. And now I've graduated, and what do I do next? I actually ended up taking a job with it used to be called the Community Food Bank. Now it's called, I believe it's called the Central Valley Food Bank, or Central California Food Bank.
Yeah.
I loved that job. I rubbed shoulders with great people, some of whom are still there. And I just got to work with a lot of volunteers. I was the volunteer director there. About 7,000 volunteers doing, working with churches, working with businesses coming in to donate their time or money or help organize, stationing the food or distributing the food to people. I was able to do that while I was, full-time working and going to, my MBA program at night and, still doing church and still, raising our first child with Kelsey and paying grandma $100 a month rent to live with her at the same time.
I remember that. Yeah.
So we're going through all that. After that, I was eager to get out of Fresno. I'll just be honest. I born and raised here, went on my mission in New Jersey for our church, really enjoyed that. Did school in Utah, but we've been to Utah quite a bit. I was eager for something out of Fresno and out of my network, out of my realm, so to speak, that was going to challenge me and be a new experience. Accepted a job, had a friend that I was networked with that got me an interview and ended up accepting a job with a company called Evraz Rocky Mountain Steel. Did that for a year and a half. Very hard job, 60, 70 hours a week. That was the corporate grind, epitomized for me. I realized there that, wow, life working for somebody else and life working in business, the typical corporate grind, this is, mentally it was taxing. It was a lot. It was constant flow of reports, emails, calls, put this in production, following up with this customer for, collections. It was just a lot. You were just doing it all the time, no stop. It was also a great experience. I learned a ton, but I also learned that I don't know that this is the work-life balance I necessarily want. Around that time, ended up getting a call from someone I knew to get into the trampoline park business, to basically open the first trampoline park in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. This is such a long story, and there's so much that can be said about this. But long story short, moved from Colorado to Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Kelsey and I know nothing about Louisiana, know nothing about trampoline parks, but it was the opportunity to run a business that was truly my own, that I was actually running. Not my own, owning it wise, but running it.
I remember all this.
And the idea of something new from the ground up and being there and running that was amazing. So we went for it. And ended up opening. We were sold out for 4 months straight through the summer. Those were crazy days. Those were 70, 80-hour days. You're training a brand new staff of 30, 17 to 22-year-olds. You're trying to manage this, $3 million revenue operation. And here I am, 28 years old. And I loved all of that. It was actually really fulfilling and really fun. And I really knew then, it was solidified for me then, that I can run a business. I can run it well. I find fulfillment doing that and running a team. And I want to do this on my own one time. Someday I want to own my own business and do this as the owner. That journey became complicated. Okay. I trained numerous people in that company and brought some in even. Private equity got involved with that company. And listen, I'm fine with private equity. I'm all for business and entrepreneurship and and people's success. The company got sold, and things changed quickly.
Okay.
And it was supremely disappointing to see that. That is when I think I saw the most. I'd seen corporate politics previous to that. Private equity and what that introduced and just kind of the folks that I was engaged with in that sphere, it was something else. It was just a new level of, I'm a very loyal person. I'm a very teamwork driven person. And it's difficult for me to process and to translate even people who I had trained and brought into this company doing things that were purely for the advancement of their own career, their own self, even if that meant putting others down. And that became quite exacerbated once private equity got involved, and it was just kind of everyone out for themselves and what we can do to prove ourselves to this new ownership group and being viable in this company. Now, I got promoted at that time. I became a regional vice president for this company, overseeing $25 million in revenue, overseeing 10 general managers who had teams of 30 to 40 people of their own. So it's not that I wasn't succeeding, but I didn't like the person it was going to force me to become if I stuck to that route in the corporate world. that I saw others around me becoming, either out of survival or out of what they deemed the need to, what they'd have to do in order to promote themselves and to go further in the company. And so I made a decision. At that time, the same individual had approached me to, start that, to get in, the trampoline parks. There was an opportunity. They had acquired some other companies to franchise. And that was, hey, I can do this and I can still be loyal to this company rather than going and doing it on my own. This is more for me. I see myself more running and owning my own business rather than climbing the corporate ladder and doing all the kind of frankly, the circus backstabbing and whatnot that there is involved with climbing the corporate ladder. Just the gymnastics of all that it was too much, and the drama. So ended up being able to put together an ownership group, got the blessing of this guy who I wanted to keep good relationship with and still leave that company with good terms, and acquired these franchises. And they were failing ones. How
many years has this been, Aaron?
Well, so this is going over 4 years.
4, okay.
From the time that I'm
30s now.
I'm like 30, 31 years
All
old.
right. Okay.
Oh, by the way, one kid's gone to 3.
Oh.
So Kelsey and I are still living in Louisiana.
Okay.
But we end up acquiring, put together a small group of investors, and it's not a small amount of money. We're talking like over $500,000.
Okay.
Where we're buying 2 parks, and it's all on me, and these parks are tanking, and I got to flip them around. So it's not like starting a new business. I'd started a trampoline park from scratch where you get to own the culture, you get to make it better or make it good from the get-go. This was taking a poor culture and a poor performing park and investing in that to turn it around. And so that's what we did. I definitely underestimated it, took some time. But I think the most disappointing thing with that experience that was sad for me to experience was people who I'd rubbed my shoulders with. And I know you've gone through this too.
For sure.
And this is the stuff, we will get into this on this podcast.
Yeah. No.
People, there is something to be said of always being positive. I support that. But there's also something to be said of calling out people on their crap. I'm sorry. But if you don't agree with that, this podcast is not for you. So I do not support, this idea that where people are out of line or where people decide that they can go ahead and act a certain way and not get called out on that. I'm sorry, but this. That's narcissistic behavior. And if enforced, it does one thing. It compounds and continues. If you have to be the one person to somehow call that out or to make a stand, that will be me every day of the week.
Well, that's the highlight of group therapy that we offer, right? I mean, you get called out on your on your behavior.
100%.
It's a benefit.
100%. So I was regional vice president. I was at the table with a few folks, and I go to acquire these businesses, and I do it. And then between text messages, phone calls, secondhand comments, what's Aaron thinking? What's Aaron doing? Aaron can't do this. Aaron, you're making a mistake. Aaron, you should have stuck with what the role you were in. I try to picture myself.
That's
one
familiar.
thing I pride myself on, when the day comes when it's time to look back on the book of Aaron's business career. You can say many things about me. One thing you cannot say to me is that I ever discouraged anyone from doing what they felt was best for them. And if they felt that was the route they should choose, that I gave them the best advice I could to pursue that path. Never. Not one time.
It's a good model.
All the way down to
right
my
there.
behavior technicians or my lowest staff, whether it's at Forward, all the way up to my highest staff. And I will espouse that or stay by that to the day I die. And in this regard, I remember feeling that so deep because these are people I'd worked so hard for. Just as you felt it on the substance abuse side, let me assure you, this was a dark place for me. Where people who I'd sat at that table, where I'd worked my butt off for them, where I'd poured in 70, 80 hours to make them a lot of money and to also build a successful company. And even people that I myself had recruited into the company and trained to get those comments and that feedback from them. Let me tell you, that's like a true Judas experience. It sucks and it's hard. And so I had to, it finally compiled enough where it's like, okay, listen, okay, people aren't what I thought they were. Obviously, I thought I'd get more support from these people that I'd been working with the last few years. And even though I was staying within the company, these were franchises within the same umbrella company, you kind of learn that, hey, maybe not everyone's out to help you. Maybe not everyone is supportive of you. and doesn't necessarily want to see you succeed. I committed then and there with these 2 parks. Number 1, I'm not going to ever be that way, no matter what I do. Number 2, I'm going to show these guys they're wrong. And I did.
That's great.
And we took parks, that were making, that were, comping 20, 30% tanking month over month. And we took them back to what they were making almost when they first opened. And they're eventually that's doing this. And eventually our parks where they're, among the lowest 50% of customer service scores in the company, these 2 parks are going to the top 10% of customer service scores in the company. People can say a lot of things, can give a lot of opinions, can talk a lot of, smack, so to speak. That's all fine and nice. I'm a results guy. Show me the results.
I would agree.
Okay. That's why I love endurance racing too. At the end of the day, you can tell me how cool your shoes are, how much better they are than mine, how much cooler your outfit is, or how much sexier you look when you run. But if you're behind me when I'm at the finish line, I don't really care. So,
which never happens.
It was hard, and the ultimate, I think, jab there was on my birthday. I'll never forget this. You shared some really powerful moments on my birthday. Some of this talk kind of made it back to the initial guy that I was always loyal to, who brought me in initially into the trampoline parks. He phoned me on my birthday and proceeded to basically just rip me for disloyalty, for, basically all these things that are kind of fraudulently being peddled about me or being said, ungrateful and such, even though I'd literally, started these businesses or bought these companies. Listen, I just as easily could have gone and done something on my own, just like I'm doing with Forward now, with the money I had. But I had stuck with the franchise. You think I didn't know how to do trampoline parks at that point in time? Of course I did. I didn't keep with the franchise because I needed the knowledge. I stayed with it because I was loyal and because I was trying to stick with these guys and be supportive of them. And so to take a call ultimately from a guy that had brought me in and was accusing me of disloyalty or these other things the other guys were peddling, because I don't know what it was. You can call it jealousy. You can call it, I don't know. They weren't supportive, or maybe they felt this would get them higher in the company. I can't speak to their motivations. Either way, he got on board with it. And that was the final straw for me. And his words, something I will never forget, was, you think you're something, you're not going to amount to anything on your own without help from people like me. And once again, I'm just like, I will remember this, my 32nd birthday. I'll never forget. I also still have Instagram and text messages from this individual, by the way, and those are fun to keep and look back on. But
there we go.
That was the day. I will find a way out. I will sell these eventually, and I did. And I sold them at a profit, by the way, and better than I found them, which I take great pride in. But in the midst of owning those 2 parks, I also moved back. Kelsey and I left Louisiana, moved back to Fresno.
Right.
When you're born and raised in Fresno and Clovis, we're spoiled here. Clovis Unified is just amazing. I just think it's such a good school experience, and it was different out there in Louisiana. And it's hard being away from family. Listen, talk about digging in. When you're raising kids on your own without grandparents, without cousins around, and you're just having to rely on whatever community you can make out there. And we made some good friends, don't get me wrong, but that's hard. When you're leaving Newport, where we go every year, and you're coming home, and Xander's asking, hey, when we see Grandma and Grandpa again, I have to leave cash? When can I see cash again? Yep. That's tough. I mean, so me and Kelsey did have to dig in a lot. For almost 5 years, we lived in Louisiana, not knowing anybody and making that a home. But ultimately, we felt, and quite honestly, to get to a spiritual level, drawn to something. We just felt it was time to move. So I had someone that managed those parks full time at that time, and we decided we'd move to Vegas to try that, where Kelsey's parents live. And I'll never forget that, spiritually speaking, there was a moment where, clear as day, and we'd only been there for 3 months, I felt specifically like it's time to move back to Fresno, and you need to move back now. I don't get those experiences, but it was like someone like I'm speaking to you now spoke to me. I think I was just at work, and it just was you need to move back to Fresno. It's time to move back right now. And we did. Before we did, I came back home. I was going to tell Kelsey how I was feeling. I was like, I got to tell you something. And Kelsey goes, I already know what it is. I'm like, I'm pretty sure you don't know what I'm going to tell you. But she goes, no, I know we need to move back to Fresno. And I was just like, what? Just as I'm telling you now, this is
Right.
how it went down.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that obviously solidified what I'd felt. And we were gone in 2 weeks,
go.
moved back home. And that was when you kind of went through your experience
Yeah.
with your previous company.
Yeah.
And I had initially gotten brought on as a consultant. There's a lot to tell here, but
Yeah, sure.
Came on with a company that I ended up rebranding as Forward. And that's when you and I decided, hey, I think we realized you've been through your experiences, on the substance abuse side.
Yep.
You'd also been in the business for a little bit. I got into some specifics with some things I dealt with people here, but you've been through that too.
Yeah.
And my experiences brought me to where I was, and you and I think just decided that we can do this, and we can do this together, and we
Yep.
can do it our way.
Yep.
And we're going to do this in a way that, yes, that's profitable, that provides for our families. But this idea that you have to screw people over or backstab people or treat them as less than or be upset or jealous of them ever getting to a place where you get, that will never happen here. It will not happen at Forward ever. And it has not happened. And I think that more than anything we do, I take the greatest pride doing that together with us. And we'll take time in future episodes to interview. There's obviously Ash and April and others that will
definitely
they'll
bring
join
them
us
on.
at
We've
future
got
times.
We've got a great crew here. Last thing I'll say, it's very interesting about you presenting challenges, and I listed some of mine. Other than you being slower than me, I find it interesting that you sit here and tell your story, and I tell mine, and what's challenging and what's a dark place. Like, you really can't tell someone how to learn something or how to view something as a dark place, right? The best part about us being polar opposites, because like you said, we really are not the same people. You have led a completely different life than me. We are very different personality-wise. We have some similarities, but your story is not the same as mine at all.
But it complements our stories complement each other.
But you have been challenged, and you have a unique way of approaching challenges, right, that you've been gifted with, but that doesn't change the challenge in front of you. I have a very different way, probably not the smartest way, but we each have our way of dealing with challenges, and putting that together, I think, again, reiterates the idea of wanting to do this.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I feel good where we're at right now, and I think that brings us, in this first discussion to a good place where, it gives whoever is watching or listening here today, on this first one, and, we're just diving in. I mean, it finally got to the point, like, are we doing this or aren't we? And so we're doing it. We're here, we're in my office, and we're just doing it, and I love it.
We want to do it, so let's do it.
Yeah, and if nothing else, I sincerely hope that more than anything, we do coaching, we do training with Dig.
Yep.
We'll be racing and sharing those stories as we go along. But more than anything, I sincerely just hope that if there's anyone that listens to these that shares the experiences of like what you and I have shared, I hope that they can take heart and they can take this, the stories we've shared.
Yeah.
And I sincerely hope that, Shaun and I are smiling, we're sitting here talking, but the reality is it's not all smiles. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. And these moments and these times we shared, it's dark, it's hard, and it's defeating. I mean, it really is. Yeah. And the more that we, I've dug in and focused on people like Dad or other mentors that I have in my life or close friends to, learn from them, ask them what their experience has been and pull from that. It's helped me to get to this place where we are now, 170 employees, 200 plus clients that we provide mental behavioral health services with. However many clients we're now coaching, for endurance training, 20, 30 plus. Yeah. I mean, and it's just a rough stone rolling right now, and it's just going to keep rolling. And I hope that the people that hear these stories that we'll sprinkle in from time to time, as well as the guests that we bring on, I genuinely hope that every episode they come on, if it even slightly makes you feel a little less alone or a little more resilient, or like, I'm not in this by myself, I can make it through this. There's been as hard or harder than what I'm dealing with now. I genuinely hope that if nothing else, that's what people can get from this.
I could not agree
more.
And
I think they will, the more that they stick along with this.
That's the name of the game here. Let's do it.
So, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, everyone.
We'll reconvene
next week.
Weekly.
Here we go.
Yeah. Thanks.